Hello, and welcome to the video for Wood and Paper Investigations 3 and 4, Getting to Know Paper and Changing Paper. Here is a list of student learning outcomes for these investigations. This list can also be found on the BPS Science Weebly website. Two of the science and engineering practices that can be observed in these investigations are analyzing and interpreting data and engaging in argument from evidence. Here is a list of questions that are suggested to use in your science notebooks. These questions can be found in your curriculum guide under the Duplication Masters tab. Here's a breakdown of the parts of Investigation 3. In Part 1, students will walk around the classroom or school in search of items made from paper. They will attach labels to point out each item they find. For Part 2, students will use crayons, markers, and pencils to draw on a variety of paper and assess which pieces are better for drawing. In Part 3, students will fold paper and compare the properties that allow it to be folded. Finally, in Part 4, students will drop water on different samples of paper and compare the results. They will also submerge paper in water and allow it to dry to observe any changes. As you might imagine, Parts 4 through 2 of this investigation involve working with a wide variety of papers. It is important to become familiar with each kind of paper and create a system to organize the paper for your class. These activities can be time-consuming, and I often find it difficult to allow for each student to explore each kind of paper. So in the past, I set up different stations with 3 to 4 different kinds of paper at each station. Once students have a chance to explore each paper at their table, they can move on to the next station. At the end of the lesson, students will come together and share their discoveries. This ensures that as a whole group, all of the paper samples will have been explored. Investigation 4, Changing Paper. This investigation is broken into 2 parts. In Part 1, Paper Recycling, students will process the old paper and make new paper. They will observe and compare the properties of their old and new paper. In Part 2, students will use a paste and paper strips to create a container. They will observe how they can change the paper from flexible to stiff. This activity can be very messy, so I invite you to take it outside to reduce cleanup time. The instructions for the first part of this investigation suggest using toilet paper and shaking it in a small container with water until pulp is created. However, I might suggest actually recycling paper from your school. If you are a specialist, this might mean collaborating with a classroom teacher to collect paper throughout the period of the week. In the past, I have used mostly white paper with a few sheets of colored paper to make a funfetti effect. Once a significant amount of paper has been collected, students can work at a station to rip the paper into small bits. While this might seem to be like a mundane task, it's surprisingly engaging. The next step in this process is to blend the paper with water to make pulp. I have found that using a kitchen blender gets the best results for this part. You can easily clean your blender after the investigation, and it will be safe to use for food projects. Once your pulp is created, you can mix in a number of items to add decorations. If you want to extend this project into the garden, you might decide to mix some seeds in your paper and plant it later. Once your decorations are in place, pour the mixture into the strainer with a basin underneath to catch the extra water. Then use a sponge or folded newspaper and another strainer to squeeze out all the water. Once you're done with that, carefully place your new paper on a piece of wax paper to dry. You might even choose to roll it out with a bottle. Please give your paper at least 24 hours to dry before you use it. You might find that you even need a little more time. There are quite a few short videos on YouTube that describe the process of recycling paper. The first two listed here are very child-based and focus more on the industrial process of recycling paper. I have also included one video that shows how to make homemade paper. I encourage you to explore all the different ways that people make paper. That's all I have for this video. Thank you for watching.